This is a video working through the Cambridge International AS and A-Level Practical 2 paper for May-June 2022 for the students at Vijay International School in the Seychelles. What you need to do this paper is obviously you need a copy of the past paper, which I'm putting on the server for you, and you also need some files. Now there's two files you'll need. The files are called, I'll just show you here, J22 port, J22 ship, and in the end you need the mark scheme, and I will provide all of that in a folder on the server. For anyone else watching, you can get a copy of this off the internet, and it's just I'm working through the paper as we go, every single question to get you 100% for this assessment. The video goes for about an hour and a half. And the actual exam itself goes for 2.5 hours. So the video is sort of a good way for you to work through it. I try and explain why I do things as I go along, just so that you can understand how the exam paper is written. I'm actually going to do this as a live video, so I'm doing it like in real time, so that we can work our way through it and see if there's any mistakes and see if we can answer each question. I'm going to video in like little short chunks. So once I've done, say, question 1, I'll finish the video and then I'll cut and then do question 2, question 3, so on and so forth, to make sure that we get this right, as if it was an exam situation. Okay. So first thing, and I advise all students to do this, is read the information. Read the paper here. Read all this information carefully, and then we will move forward. It says candidates need source files listed on page 2. I've got the source files right here. It's this file and this file. They came from Cambridge. You can see I've downloaded all the past papers, but this is the two source files they're talking about. I'm also going to need Microsoft Excel, so I've got that on my computer here. I'll just get that started while I'm reading through the paper. So I just go to here and I scroll down. You've been supplied with the following files. Tawara Shipping operates several small containers. Container ships which travel between 10 different ports. The ships operate 7 days a week, but some ports will not allow ships to leave on a Saturday or a Sunday if their custom officers do not work on these days. You will develop a spreadsheet to plan a ship's route. Okay, so it looks like I'm building a spreadsheet. That's what it's telling me. There's a few other little bits of information in there, but that's sort of the first thing. I'm going to be building a spreadsheet. All distances are in nautical miles and all speeds are in nautical miles per hour, which is knots. You must use the most effective method to solve each task. All documents produced must be a professional standard and suit the business context. Open and carefully examine the two CSV files. Do not edit these files, right? So, and then it says create a spreadsheet that looks like this. So that's what question 1 looks like. So it looks like I'm setting up a spreadsheet, A to G, different columns here. Some of them have got strange heights in here, little heights in here, so I'm going to read through and make sure I get that right. That's what it looks like I'm doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up these two CSV files. I'm opening with Microsoft Excel, and I'll bring that across. Here's one. Going to max that out and zoom in so I can see the data. I notice there's only one tab down the bottom on the left hand side. Looks like we've got ships' names, speeds, tonnage, capacity, those sorts of things. I'm going to have a look at the second file, which is here. Same thing, one tab down the bottom. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see what's going on here. We've just got A, B, C, D, F, N. There's no hidden rows or anything. They're just letters. Lots of numbers. Looks like there's a nothing section through the middle here. Port name, customs, something or other. I can't really read that, but that's okay. Days of the week are numbered, and there's a port code. Okay, so yep, I can look at those two files. Just going to minimize them down and go to my document. The first thing is create a spreadsheet that looks like this. So I'm going to aim to create that spreadsheet now, but before I do that, I just want to read the whole question. Merge cells A1 to G1, so that's A1 there to G1, yep. A3 to G3, A3 to G3, I understand that, and A7 to G7, A7 to G7. Now, that doesn't tell me about 5, it doesn't say that I've merged 5 yet, but it looks like on there 5 is merged as well. But anyway, I'm just going to follow the instructions that they're giving me. Okay. Display the merged cells A1 to G1 and A3 to G3 with a dark blue background and yellow text. Format the text in row 1 to 36. Format the text in row 1 to be 36 points high and the text in row 3 to be 22 points high. And there's a little half a row in there. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to follow the instructions exactly as they give to them. Here we go. Right align cells A5 and C5, left align and merge cells A7 to G7, center align all other cells. So all other cells are center aligned. So it does talk to me about those mergers, and then there's a few other things here. Insert on the left in the header the text created on, followed by a space, then the automated date, then a space, then the text at, then a space followed by the automated time. The automated date must be displayed in day, day, month, month, year, year, year format. Insert on the right in the header an automated file name. So these are both in the headers. Insert in the left in the footer, created by, followed by your name, center number, and candidate number. Save your spreadsheet as. Okay, so this is really important, but they're headers and footers, so I can do them last. So the first thing I'm going to do is create this spreadsheet. So I'm going to Excel, I'm going to say File, New, so I'm making a new spreadsheet. Now, let's just minimize this one out of the way and start my new spreadsheet here. And it says, the first thing it says is, save your spreadsheet as TS1 underscore. So the first thing I do before I even put any information or data in is I'm going to say File, Save As, and I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to save it exactly the way they say, TS1 with an underscore, and it says followed by your center number. Now I don't know the center number, so I'm just going to pretend it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to put underscore for the next one. Candidate number, I'm going to say it's 7777. Something like that, that'll do. You will know your center number and you will know your candidate score because it'll be written up on the board in front of you during the exam. Okay, so you should have those. For me, I've just made up 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 7, 7, 7. So I hit save, and I can check that I've saved by looking at the top of the screen here and making sure my file is saved there. Right, I'm going to go back to this picture and I'm going to look at this picture and I'm going to say, okay, we are going A to G cells. Now, I can see that those cells look like they're wider than normally, so I could maybe make them a little bit wider. Let's just set them up to start with. First thing I'm going to do is go A to G. So I've got A to G there, cell 1A, and they said merge the cells. Right, so I'm going to merge those. I'm going to go to the merge and center button and click merge. And so now I've got my merge and centered first cell. A3 to G3, so A3 to G3. I'm going to merge and center those ones as well. Right, display the text in A1 and 3 with a dark blue background and a yellow text. Right, so let's start setting up first. In here, I'm going to write Tawara shipping. Okay, I'm going to leave that one. Then I'm going to go here. Now that you can see that centered itself automatically, which is fantastic. The next one, no ship selected. No ship. Now I'm also making sure my capital letters are the same, everything's the same. I'm trying to make it identical. Now it said that in here, the main heading has to be format row 1, 36 points high. So I'm going to highlight that and I'm going to change that to 36 points high. Now if I click on this little arrow here, it automatically gives me the height that I need for that box for it to be correctly the right size. Now this one, it says 22 points high, so I'm going to change that to 22 points high, and it's made that one supposedly the correct size. Now it has not said anything about row heights, row things, any of that sort of stuff. I could go down and read through this carefully. The user will enter the start date journey, enter a formula, the user will code. Okay, so none of that really talks about what it looks like. So in terms of what it looks like, it hasn't told me any fonts, it hasn't told me any row heights or any of those sorts of things. So I am going to just make sure that that's exactly right. Now, I'm also going to go to, it looks like in here, it looks like that is this very, very small one. So 2, 4, and 6 look like they're like nearly half the height of the one above it. So just for the purpose of now, I'm just going to reduce my row height to, say, 6 pixels there. So I can just see the bottom of the 2, kind of similar to theirs. I'm going to do the same with row 4, and I'm going to make that consistent. So I'm going to make that 6 pixels as well. And then it looks like row 6, I'm going to do the same thing. So all of those, I'm making exactly the same, 6 pixels, half the row height. Now, if I go back to my thing here, it says dark blue background, yellow text. So I'm clicking on this box, I'm going to fill, and I'm going to choose a dark blue background, changing my text to a yellow text, right? Same thing here, dark blue background, yellow text. It doesn't say which exact one, it just says dark blue with yellow, so that looks pretty good to me. Okay, now I'm going to go through and start putting a few other things in. Let's have a look what it says. Display the merged text A1, A3 with the dark blue background yellow. Format the text in row 1 to 36 points high, in row 3 to 22 points high. I've done everything there. I could tick them off, could highlight them, tick them off. I've done that. Right align cells A5 and C5. So A5, it says right align. So I'm going to right align that. And then it says C5. So I'm going to go row C5, and I'm going to right align that. So I've right aligned both of those. Okay, right align cells A5. Left align the merged cells A7 to G7. So it's saying A7 to G7 must be merged, which I've just done, but that merges and centers. It wants me to left align, which I've just done that by clicking this button up here. Right, so I'm just doing my alignments by using these here. So I've done that. Center align all other cells. So that's all it says at this stage. So with that in mind, I'm going to start putting in some of this information. This one says ship's code with apostrophe. Ship's lowercase code colon. Right, so if I let go of that, that looks okay. Now, one of the things that's definitely happening here is these rows or cells across the top are definitely different sizes, like they're wider. That one's much wider. The F is not much wider, but I'm going to highlight all of my rows. I'm going to say column width, all of my columns, sorry, and I'm going to take them to 15, which gives me a much easier section to do. And the beauty of that is you can now see that that is right aligned, so that I know that I've done it right. So all I did was expand those columns out. Now, it didn't say I had to do that, but I can see visually that that's the way it is. Same as I saw that these are half heights, I can see visually that that's the way that's supposed to be. So I've just done that as well, all right? So we've got ship's code. I'm just going to put this actually under the sheet here so I can see it. C5 has in here start date, colon, okay, and then there's the full row all the way across which says journey details. And I've put a capital in, so I'm going to actually change that so that it is exactly the same. I don't want to make any little mistakes that the examiner could take a mark off me. Right, then we're going to row 8. Now row 8 has a substantial height here. The text looks like it's center aligned. It does actually tell me to center align every other row. It also has the text rolled over so that you can read everything that says there. It does kind of look like travel time days is a narrower column. So I'm just going to make sure when I type these in that mine looks the same as this. Okay, so and in fact I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so that we can see what's going on. No, it doesn't want me to zoom. Oh, it's because I've got a cell selected. Right, now I can zoom in a little bit more. Go back to my document so I can see it, and we get a similar size. It's not exactly the same, but a similar size, and things are starting to look right. Now this is interesting here because journey details, it said C7, it said C7, A7 to G7 had to be left aligned merged cells. Now if I look at that, that is left aligned. I can see that it's left aligned there. and it's merged cells, but you can see that this one, they nearly line up, right? So that actually gives me a bit of an indication that that cell should be about that long. Okay, so that I'm just making a small or minor change there because visually I want it to look exactly the same as the examiner's paper. I'm trying to make sure everything's right. Okay, now under this we've got planned depart date. Planned depart date, colon. Next cell across, I have in here depart date, colon. Next one, port code, colon. Next one is port, colon, number of miles, colon, and again, I'll keep putting capital letters in here and make sure that it's exact number of miles. This one says travel time days. That one's going to be important because the width of that one and the height of that one might influence the height overall. We'll get to that in just a minute. Arrive date. Shouldn't that be arrival date? No, don't fix their mistakes. Arrive date. Okay, now all of that needs to be center aligned. It told me that it had to be center aligned. Next thing, I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to go format cells. And where I go to format cells, this window will pop up. And I'm going to go to alignment and I'm going to say wrap text. So that way the text will wrap around the way that it needs to wrap so that it fits, okay? So I'm just going to hit OK. Alright, so that looks good to me. Also, all of this stuff looks like it's centered. It's not down in the bottom part of the cell here. So I'm going to align it to the center. So I've center aligned everything. So it actually says in here, merge all the cells, center align all other cells. So I have actually center aligned all of those cells, and in fact, it says center align all other cells. Okay, so it's telling you what to do with those, center align. I might even go to here, just for good measure, and make sure that these are center aligned as well. I don't think you're really going to notice any difference there, but I have done that too. Okay, now, we can see that one looks kind of the same, that one looks kind of the same, that one looks kind of the same, although it's definitely wider in there. So I'm just going to leave that at this stage. That's the same. Number of miles, that is definitely too wide because I can see on there that number of miles should be like that. In fact, even the word of has rolled over. So I'm just going to move that just so that the of rolls over. So it's the same as theirs. There we go. Travel time date has rolled over to one word per line. So I'm going to say, how close can I get to being just so it rolls? There. Now I'm going to click on here and I'm going to have to actually move this up so that down so that I can see all of those things so it looks exactly the same, and that looks better. That's what I was talking about, that the 3 lines of text here gives me a better indication of the size of these cells. I'm actually going to have another, just scroll down here and have another little look. Now I've made mine a similar size, not exact, a similar size, and it's pretty close, right? So if I pull that to there, that's about right. I think that that should be about there. That's about right. That one should be about there. That one should be about there. Departure date, planned date. See now, if you line that up with the one at the top, which is what I'm trying to do, it's actually not right. Now let's roll that over just a little bit. Now that says planned depart date, so the actual word depart needs to roll over. There we go, so that one's correct. Let's shorten that up a bit. About there. Right, let's shorten that up a lot. About there. Let's shorten the port one up a bit to about there. Number of miles, the word of needs to roll over, so I've got to move that again back to where it was. Of. Come on, of, roll over. There we go. Time travelled, that's definitely narrower. And then arrival date. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, the way this looks now looks exactly the same as mine down here, except there's a really noticeable thing here, is that these cells actually have a frame around them down to 24. So if you notice that it's got a border all the way around down to 24. And I want to actually do that so that I know that I'm doing this right, and it starts at 8, and it goes down to 24 to there, and I'm going to go to all borders, which is here, and I'm going to say all borders. Okay, so now I think mine is looking the same. I'm going to make sure I hit save so that I'm up to date, and for me, I've made that look exactly the way that it needs to look for question 1. All right, merge cells, done that, done that, done that, done that. Right, now let's get down to this section here to make sure I get my full points. Insert on the left header the text created on in bold with a capital with a colon, right? So I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go to insert. Then I'm going to go over to this side here. This is on my version of Excel. There is headers and footers there. So I'm going to click on that headers and footers, and it takes me to this one here. Now I'm going to click in this add header at the top here, and I am going to add my header in here. Now it says insert on the left in the header. There's the right, there's the left. In the left in the header, the text created, small on, colon, and that definitely is bold. Now I'm using Command B so that I can do this so I don't have to jump back and forward in here. I just use Command B on my keyboard, or Control B if you're on a PC. So I've done that. Then it says followed by a space. Press space. Then it says then the automated date. So I'm going to go up here to the top here, and I'm going to say current date. Bang, so it's done the automated date for me. Then a space, so I'm going to hit space after that. Then the text at in bold, so I'm going to go AT, I'm going to highlight that, I'm going to hit Command B to make sure it's bold, which it is. And then I'm going to say, then a space followed by the automated time. So I'm going to hit space, then I'm going to hit current time. Okay, so I've done that exactly as they said up there, then the current time. The automated date must be displayed in the format of day, day, month, month, year, year. Right, so how do I check that on the date? I'm going to go to the current date here. I'm going to right click on it. No, let's have a look. Oops, don't want to add it. Don't want to add it again. Take that off. That's a good one. So let's work out how we actually check the current date format. Headers and footers. Let's right click on it. Let's go into here. Highlight that. Right click. Control click. No, it's not giving me that. Interesting. Format. So. Okay, I'm going to leave that for a second. I'm going to go back and check how that actually is done, and then I'll come back to that. Formulas, headers and footers, different page. That's an interesting one. I might just right click on the page. Actually, I might right click on the cell. Oh no, actually it's done. If I look at it, it's done. I've clicked off that, and it's actually come up as 242024. Now, that for me is day, day, month, month, and then the year format. That's good. It's already automatically done it for me. However, I'm going to go back and do a little bit of research, and we'll work out how we can change that one in case your file is set up incorrectly. So bear with me for that one. So that's done. Insert on the right header an automated file name with no file path. So I'm going to click on here. Insert in the right header with an automated file name with no file path. Insert in the left footer created by. Okay, so I'm still in the header here. Just going to go back to my headers and footers here, and I'm going to go file path in there. File path and file. Now this says insert on the right head in the header an automated file name with no path. So I'm actually going to go here and delete the and path. Okay, click off that, check that it worked. It's given me just the file name. So that's a little trick there, right? So if I click in there, if you click on file path, it'll give me the file name and path. If you click on just file name, it should give me the just file. So let's just have a look at that again. Yep, just file. So you want to make sure that you do that because it says no path. Now, last section, it says down here, insert in the left footer created by, so I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to go to add footer, left-hand side, created by colon. I'm going to highlight that and make it bold. Okay, and then it says followed by your name, center number, and candidate number. Right, so I'm just going to put in here Nick May, comma, center name, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, comma, my candidate number was 7777. Okay, put a space in there. Okay, so that looks like I've done it. Now, for me, I think I have completed the expectations there. I'm going to hit save. I want to go out of this view, right? So this is something that sometimes people get a bit mixed up on. Oh, how come now I'm stuck in this strange view, this strange footer view, right? So you can actually go, let me just expand this page right out again. Okay, so you can see. Now, if I go to view, I can go to over here to the left-hand side at the top, and I just go normal view, right? So it takes me back to a normal view. If I wanted to check my headers and footers, I could go print, and I could see here that I've got my headers and footers. They are on the page, okay? And I probably would even go scale to fit so that I know my whole document fits onto one page. So I would know that works, all right? So for me, I think that works. I'm going to go cancel, file, save, and I have completed question number 1, right? So I've checked everything, saved my file the right way. The code for a ship starts a journey. Okay, so that's part of question 2. So up to there, I think I've got 14 marks. So that's the end of this section of the video. About the date, the structure of the date in the header and the footer. That is influenced by the way your computer is set up, your country codes, and the structure that your computer is set up, the way that it displays the date, okay? There's no way in Excel, without going in and typing in some coding modules to change the actual structure of it, Excel will always use the same layout that you have for your computer, right? So if your computer is set up like mine is up in the top right-hand corner, day, month, and then year, then that's the way your computer, your Excel will set up your day, month, year. So it's something you don't need to change, you don't need to play with it. Just leave it the way it is in your computer, and then you don't have an issue in the exam. We're starting part 2. Now, we've got our file here ready to go. There's one thing that I just wanted to make sure that you've done with your file that you should have done that I didn't mention at the start is when you saved your file, or you say save as, or save either way, you need to make sure that wherever you're saving it, the folder or wherever it is, the other 2 files are in the same location. So you can see here my J22 port CSV and my J22 ship CSV, they're in the same location that I'm saving my file to, because as we move along through this project and you want to start calling information from those files, you want them next to each other so they can find the file straight away, not going searching through other folders and where it's going to be and all that sort of stuff. If the file's right there next to it, then you can be sure that it'll know where it is. It can see it straight away, okay? So that's the first thing I want you to make sure, that you have the 2 files supplied from Cambridge in the same folder as where you're saving your new file right here. Okay, so let's go to the questions and look at the next part of the question. So we are down to part 2, which is here. Now, it says, the code for a ship and the start date of the ship's journey will be entered by the user into cells B5 and D5 respectively. So I don't really need to know anything. I just need to know that B5, that's there, and D5 there, they're going to have information entered by a user, right? So really, there's not going to be much code going into there because the user's going to be putting something in there, right? So, question 2, the user will enter the start date of the ship's journey in D5, enter a formula in A9 to display the start date. So they're going to enter the start date in D5, and you want that displayed down here. That's really easy, right? So all you have to do is say equals, and it equals exactly what they've put into there, equals D5, right? So in here, that's the only formula I need to put in, is it equals exactly the same as D5, right? So if, for example, I go to here and I put in, I know the 1st of the 1st, 2024, it comes down exactly the same thing is mirrored down here, okay? So, I mean, that's basic. That's the easiest one you can do. So that's an easy mark for you right there. Next, the user will enter a port code for the departure port in cell C9. So let's go back. C9 is there. Oh, so the user's going to enter a port code into there. Okay, yeah, I understand that. Enter a function in cell D9 to display the name of the port using the code entered by the user in cell C9 and the source files provided. Okay, so enter a function D9. Okay, so the user's going to enter a port code into here, and the name of the port has to come up here. All right, that's basically what it is. So you know straight away we're going to be doing a lookup. We're going to look up that code, right? So I'm going to go to here. I'm going to say equal v lookup. There we go. It came up straight away. Equal v lookup, and actually gives me the little range of things that I need to do in here, right? So the first thing we're going to look up is C9. So I'm going to click C9 right there, and then I've got to put a comma after that. Okay, so I know that I'm looking up C9. Now, it says the table array. Okay, so that's normally the list of information from the other table that we want to get. Column index, range lookup. Okay, so let's have a look at this. We're going to do a VLOOKUP of C9. We actually want to go to the file. So let's go and find the file. Here it is, J22 port, is that it? Yep, port name. So we're going to be looking up, essentially, there's the codes and there's the names of the ports. So we're going to be looking up, let's have a look here. We're going to look up, all right, let's go back to here. We're going to look up, oh look, it did it for me. As I clicked on it, it actually did it for me. But I'm going to delete that and we're going to do it step by step so you guys can see what I'm doing. We're going to the file that was called J22, what's the actual file name called? J22 port.csv, right? So J22 port.csv, okay, so that's where we're going to go looking for it. Now, I still have to say which array of sections I want to go to. So I'm actually going to put a space exclamation mark. So the exclamation mark says go and look from this section. And the section I want to look from is A3 down to B12, right? So I'm going to go to here and I'm going to say A3 colon B12. Okay, so now I've told it go and look at this table. So go to this file and look at this table, this section in that table, okay? So I'm going to hit a comma after that. Which column do I want it to look at for my answer? Well, I want it to look at the second column. There's the first, there's the second. So I want it to look at the second column. So if I go back to here, I want it to look at column number 2, and I want the exact value, so I'm going to put in the exact 0. I don't want it to be approximate value, I want it to be an exact value. So I'm going to put a 0 in there, or I could write the word false, right? But I'm just going to put that in. I should close that bracket, and then I should be able to hit enter, and it should work, okay? We have found a typo in your formula. Okay, do I want to accept this? Okay, so the typo is, I put a space in there. I should have put the space in there. I'm just going to take that space out. Hit here, hit enter. Okay, and it's coming up not applicable. But it's not wrong. It's just coming up saying not applicable. So I need to enter a code. So let's test a code. Let's have a look at D, which should be this Dolumbo, right? So let's put a D in there and just have a look. D. Yep, and Dolumbo comes up. Let's test another one. Let's try Z, which could be Fingawagawa. All right, let's put in a Z. Okay, so that works. So that's part 2 of the question. I think we've done that. Let's just have a quick look, make sure that we've got that right. Bang, part 2. Oh, part 2 we've already done. We did that. Part 3. The user enters a port code into the budget into C9. We did that. Enter a function in the cell D9 to display the name of the port using the information from C9 we got and the source files provided. So we've done that. So we've just got an extra 6 marks there. Okay, now let's move down to question number 4. Let's bring this back up on the screen. I probably should delete that in there, and I probably, well, let's already got a code there. Let's just make sure that's there. So I've cleared my file, so I've got no data in there that I shouldn't have in there. I'm just going to hit save, but I have got my formula. It is working. And now we're going to move on to question 4. And it says, enter a function into cell B9 to display the date of departure. So if I go to here, I'm going to look at here B9, date of departure. It's going to be right there. Okay, so into the date of departure, but they're going to put the date in there, which should come up there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this cell right here. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to say format. And I'm going to make sure that that formatted cell is on date, right? So it is. I've already gotten onto date. So I'm going to make sure that cell is on date. You know, if that's on date, I also need to make sure this cell is on date. Format cell. Let me just drag this over and date. Okay, that's good. And in which case, this is a date. I want this one to be formatted the same way. So I'm just going to format that cell, drag it over, make sure it's on date, hit OK. All right, so now I've got that, and that all set up to dates. Okay, this one should be my port code. And this one should be my lookup function for the port, okay? So that's all correct so far, the date of departure. Your solution must check if the port the ship is departing from allows ships to leave on the planned departure date. On the planned departure date. So if I look up in here, okay, so customs is closed on a Saturday or a Sunday, okay? So I'm going to somehow have to look up to see if I'm allowed to depart from a port on a Saturday or a Sunday. And I'm going to have to look up which port. So let's use a port. Let's use port P, Port Papad. I'm going to use that as my example port because it's closed on a Sunday. So we should have, it makes it more difficult and we can check for the errors, right? So let's go to our port code here and I'm going to put in port P. Don't need any of that, just the P. Right, Port Papad, so that works. And let's go for a start date. And I want to choose a Sunday, so let's have a look, because I want this to error, I want this to have a problem so we can make sure it's right. So today's the 2nd, so that means Sunday is going to be what? The 7th. So let's go 07/06/2024, so that should be Sunday the 7th of April. Okay, so I've got that in there. Now that should be displaying there. Oh, did I delete that function before when I changed it? I shouldn't have. That should be equaling to D5, right? So hit enter on that. Okay, so I must have made a little mistake there somewhere when I changed the format and deleted it. So that's correct, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. And this is the cell we're working on, which I've changed to a date format. Now, what we wanted to do is we wanted to look up this file, J22 port. We want to look into this section here and we want to check if whichever port, whether it's closed on that day or not. That's sort of what we're looking at doing. Okay, so let's do a VLOOKUP for that. So let's go to here and let's say equals V. Now I'm just going to show you this. I've just started to type that equals VL, so I can go into here and I can actually just click VLOOKUP and it does, that already does it for me. And there's another function that we haven't really used yet in Excel which makes it even faster than that. Instead of me trying to type all this code out, I'm going to actually click this FX button here. And the FX button brings up a formula bar here, right? So it's a formula button, not an FX. It's a formula. Now, I can start just by clicking where I want these values to come in from, and it'll write the code for me. It's kind of like a really fast way to write all of these values here to write them in. So I want to do a VLOOKUP, right? So I'm going to click in my lookup value. I want to look up my port code, C9. So that's the first thing I want to look up, is my port code, because I'm going to check if that port code is available on a Saturday or a Sunday. So I'm going to click in here, which table do I want to look up? I go to my other file, and I want to look up all of that, because I'm looking up the port name, the port code, and whether it's open on a Saturday or a Sunday. So all I've done is highlight that. Go back here, and it's actually written the code for me, which makes it so much quicker. Which column do I want to look up? Well, in this case, I want to look up the third column. 1, 2, 3. I want to look up the third column. So I'm going to put 3 in here, and I want the exact answer that comes back from that column. So that's all I'm going to do. I click done, and it's come up with a Sunday. So that says to me, it's gone into here, it's looked up Port Peppered, and it said in there is a Sunday. Okay, fantastic. I know my VLOOKUP works, but that's not the question they've asked me. If I go into here, it says, if the departure date is the same, if it does, the departure date will be the same as the planned date. If not, the departure date will be 1 day later than the planned date. So that gives me a huge clue because it says if in there. So it's an if statement. So instead of just doing a VLOOKUP, I'm going to change this to, in here, I'm going to change this to an if statement. So I'm going to say if, open a new set of brackets. If this VLOOKUP exactly equals nothing, right? So in other words, I go to this file here and nothing happens, it hasn't got a Saturday or a Sunday. So if my VLOOKUP equals exactly nothing, then what do I want to happen? I just want it to print exactly the same date as that's already there, which would be A9, right? So I want it to print the exact same departure date, A9. But what happens if it does have a word in there? I want something else to happen. Okay, so I'm just going to put in the word something else to happen just as a test. And then I'm going to close that if statement and I'm going to hit enter. Now we can see here it says, in fact, let's make it just something else, not something else to happen because it's too long and I can't read it, right? So let's put something else. Right, so we need to do something else in here. So if I click on something else here, I need to think about what else I want to do here. I want to check that the date is open or closed, depending on whether it's got a word on there in there or not. So we need to check the date. Okay, so to check the date, we can use a different function. I'm just going to go, just go over here, and let's do this function here, which is called equals weekday, and we want to check the weekday based on this date. Okay, so I'm going to click A9 and close the bracket there. So that's going to check the weekday based on A9. Now, if I hit enter, that's saying that the 7th of the 6th is a 6, which is saying it's a Friday. Let me check on the J port. 6 is a Friday. 7th of the 6th, what am I in? I'm in April. I want 7th of the 4th. Right, so if I change that to 7th of the 4th, which would be April, then it should be a Sunday, which means that should change to a 1, which it did. Okay, so it was really important you work on your dates and make sure you get them right. I got the date wrong at the start. So 7th of April, which is a Sunday, is coming over here and it's saying to me, okay, on the Sunday, which if I look here, it should be closed, right? So I've just checked that by doing weekend and it says weekend equals A9, okay. So let's go back to this section in here. Okay, so I need to do a lookup here of the date and compare that date to whether it goes into here on a Saturday, and I actually need to compare the numbers down here, right? So I'm kind of doing a couple of comparisons. I'm finding out whether there's a word in here. If there is a word in here, I'm going to get the number date from the weekday, and then I'm going to compare that into here and decide what happens from there. So let's go to here and let's go back to here and start here. So I've done my VLOOKUP. I've looked at the port and I've found out whether there's any information, whether the port has a word in there. If the port does not have a word in there, I'm leaving A9. If it does have a word in there, I need to do a lookup in here. And I think I need it to be an if statement. So I'm just going to do if. And in fact, my if statement's going to have to be inside a bracket because it's going to have something else in it is there. I'm going to do another bracket and I'm going to say if the weekday, so I'm just going to use that function weekday that's already there. The weekday of, let me think here, that's going to be A9, which is this one. So if that weekday exactly, oops, don't change it to B9. If that weekday of A9 exactly equals, now I'm going to have to do a lookup here. What am I looking up? I'm looking up the, I'm going to look up the section here and I'm going to compare it to, and I'm going to see if I can find it in here. So let's go back to here. I might even try and use the function thing in here. Let's do V. I'm going to do a VLOOKUP here. I'm going to hit my function thing here. I'm going to say I want to look up C9, which is C9, that's that one, the port to start with. I need to find the port in this section here, which is the same as what I did before. It's exactly the same as what I did before. right? And I need to have the column index, which is going to be the same. It's going to be column 3, and I need to find the exact value. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm saying, go back, look up the port, see if the port has a word in there, and if that word can then be found in this section down here. So in other words, because I'm doing a weekday, it's going to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I find the same day that's in here, in the section here, then I need to change the date, right? So let's go into here. So we're doing a VLOOKUP for C9 for that day, and we need to do, it sounds a bit silly, but I need to do a VLOOKUP inside a VLOOKUP. I need to do 2 VLOOKUPs because I'm doing one lookup here for the date, but I also need to do a VLOOKUP for it matching in the other thing. So in fact, in here, I think I need to do another VLOOKUP here first. VLOOKUP brackets. So I'm doing a VLOOKUP comparing my port code to, yes, this is what table array am I comparing it to? I'm doing that table array is going to be this one here. Bang, that section there. I'm comparing it to that. So that's done. My column index is going to be column number 2, and my range is going to be 0. So that should be exactly like that. I should say done on that. Okay, but I haven't finished all my other things, right? So that's why it's giving me an error. Then I'm going to say, okay, if it does find a 1 or it does find a, so if the fact is true, if it finds a Saturday, which is a 1, or a Saturday which is a 7, or a Sunday which is a 1, so it's found something in here, a word, and that word matches with something in here, I need to add 1 day. So Sunday would become a 2, and Saturday would then roll over and become a 1. Okay, and none of them are closed on Saturday and Sunday, so it would be okay to add just 1. So what I actually need to do is say, I want the contents of A9, which is that, plus 1, plus the number 1. Otherwise, I don't need any contents, I just leave it as A9. Otherwise, I leave it as A9, and then I need to close all my brackets, bracket, which would be my first VLOOKUP, bracket, that's my second VLOOKUP, bracket, that's my if. Okay, I've got my 3 brackets closed, so if I hit enter in here, it's given me a date, right? So it looks like it's worked. So I'm going to go over that one more time because it was fairly complicated. What we're doing is, the first thing we're doing is we're checking to see if the port, which is this one, port code P, has any information on here that says it's closed on a certain day. That's the very first thing we do. If it is not closed, so in other words, if it's open, then the departure date here will be exactly the same as the departure date here, because the port's open, you can send on the same day. But if it comes up and says, yes, in fact, it is closed on that day, we need to work out if that's a Saturday, the Saturday number would be coming down here as a 7, or the Sunday number would be coming in as a 1. And if it is closed on that day, we need to increment the date by 1 day, by 1 extra day. Saturday, it's closed, they can't send anything out on Saturday, so they're going to send it out on the Sunday. Sunday, it's closed, they can't do anything on Sunday, they're going to send it out on the Monday, okay? And none of these are closed 2 days in a row, so we just increment it by 1, which is why when I did this code here, I did A9 plus 1. We're just incrementing it by 1 day. However, if none of that's true, then we can just leave it as A9. We can leave it as the same date, okay? So this is kind of a VLOOKUP inside a VLOOKUP, inside an if, which is about the weekend. It's a long, complicated piece of code, but actually if you think about it in the terms of you're trying to send a package, the port's closed, you can't send it on that day, well, you send it the next day, it makes it a lot easier. So whenever we're designing new software or whenever we're creating something like a spreadsheet or database or any of that sort of stuff, I always say to the students, make sure you test to see if it works. Now, this is where we're at the moment. We've got the 7th of the 4th, and it's moving forward to the 8th of the 4th, right? So I'm going to go to here, and I'm just going to go, okay, so we're at Pepard, so that's a Sunday, and therefore it's closed on a Sunday, so that it's moving forward to a Monday. But what about a Saturday? I want to test this, say this Dolumbo one, which would be a Saturday, all right? So the first thing is if I go into here and I change my port code to a D and then hit enter, but you'll notice that that didn't move, that didn't change. But wait a minute, we know the 7th is a Sunday, so if I click here and I check Dolumbo, well, it's open on a Sunday, so it wouldn't change, so that would be correct. But I want to test if it's still going to work on the Saturday. So I'm going to go back here, I'm going to change this to the 6th, which would be a Saturday, and you can see this one changed to the 6th, but this stayed on the 7th. So this proves to me that the code is working for both a Saturday and for a Sunday. So that's a really good point to be at. If I go back to my question, that was this question here, I think we've completed question 4, we've got full 15 marks, so now we're going to move on to question 5. The user will enter a port code for the next port on the ship's journey in cell C10. Enter functions in cell E11 to display the number of miles from the port shown in row 9 to the port shown in row 10. Alright, so that's a little bit complicated, but let's just go through and check that again, right? They'll enter into C10. So in C, which is there, that's where they're going to enter the new port code. Okay, so let's say, for example, we put in F as our new port code. I'm just going to use that as an example to start with. So we've entered the new port code in there. Enter functions in cell E11, which means E11 here. That's where we want to enter E11 to display the number of miles from the port shown in row 9 to the port shown in row 10. Okay, so then the distance from D to F, right? And the answer should come in here, number of miles. It says 11, right? So enter the function in, E10. So it's going to put it in there. Okay, so we've got D's the port, F's the new port, and then it's going to go into there. Now, one thing you'll also notice here is I've put in F there, but that hasn't come in, the port name. Okay, so what I could do is click here, and if I drag down, I should get the port name came in there. Okay, so that's one thing that's pretty important. It's got the port name, and I just want to check that the code, yeah, it updates to each one. So I've just clicked on the thing, dragged it down, so now I've got the port name, and we're working in E10 right here. E10, check my thing, E10. Okay, so we've got to get the distance from D to Flamingo. Now, if I go back here and I look at my port things, it has the miles from A to wherever, or from P to whatever. Now, we started at D, Dolumbo, and we're going to F. So if I go to D, which is column F, D, and we're going down to F, it should say 1500. That's what we should be looking for as our result. So let's put a formula together to find that result. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be using two new functions essentially to get the information from this other file, from this J22 port file, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we need to have a function that finds this D and then goes to here and says, okay, where is D down here, okay? And then we need to have a function that finds this F and says, all right, where is the F across here? And then we need to have something that finds the intersection of that D and that F there, which then comes down and gives us this answer, right? So essentially we're going to use two functions that find these letters across the top, and we're going to use what's called a match function for that. And then we're going to use an index function which actually takes this whole array of numbers and finds where the two intersect, where our two matching things intersect, okay? So we're going to use an index and then two matches. Now, just to show you really quickly how that might work, right? So I'm just going to use a cell out here just as an example. So I go into here and I could say equals match, and I'm just going to choose my function there. Now, I want to match what is in this cell here, so C9. So I want to match C9. And where do I want to match it from, right? So I'm going to put in a comma after that, and I'm going to say I want to match it from the array here and I'm going to say I want it to match it from there, right? So from that section there. So then I go back here, and you can see it's written my code, and I can say comma 0 because I want it to be the exact number. So I can hit that in there, and that will find where it is in the position, right? So it's found it in 1, 2, it's found in position 3. So that's how the match function works. I've matched that D. Now essentially I would do the same for the F, and I'm going to do this a different way to show you two different techniques. In here I'm going to put match. Okay, so there's my match function, and remember I'm going to use this little function thing over here this time. So this time I'm going to go here, look up value, and I click on F, and so it automatically does it for me. Then I'm going to say look up array, and I go back here, and I'm going to be looking at this array here at the top, so these lines of different letters at the top here. So I go back and that puts it there, and the match type I want it to be exact. Okay, so I hit enter, and this one gives me a number 4. Now I can check that by saying 1, 2, 3, the fourth column, there's my F. So I've got two different match functions here that match those to the other file, right? So that's the first thing. But it's pointless matching those two things without actually then cross-referencing all of this data here to find where F and D cross each other. So we do that using an index function. I'm going to do that on the fly so I can show you how that works. So I'm going to click here. This is our cell that we have to actually make the main function in, is right here, this one, where we want to get the miles from D to F. So to do this, I start off and I say index. Okay, so I want to index, and the index that I'm going to do is going to be all of that information from that array. So I could press my F and go and highlight the array, or I can actually just go and do it over here. So I'm going to click over here. I'm saying this is the array that I want you to index. So I want you to get all the information from this array right here. Okay? Now, I've got all that information. What do I want to do? Well, I want to match the two letters, right? So if you're reading this little bit of information here, I've got my array. So where is my row number and where is my column number? You can see those two little words say there. So I'm going to say comma, and then I'm going to say match. So I'm actually going to have my match function in here. And I'm going to, in fact I could, let's just do it this way. We're going to match the first column. So I'm doing exactly what I did in here, the exact same section of code in here. So I'm going to match my rows from here. No, sorry, I made a mistake. Let's undo that. I'm going to match this one here, D. So I put that C9 in there first. Then I put my comma in. Then I go to my file here, and I want to match from something in there, which is perfect, comma 0, close that bracket. So now I've got my index range, I've got my first match, which is my D. Now I've got to put in my second match, and you see here it says column number, right? So I'm going to put comma, and then I'm going to put another match in, the same as I did before in my first example down here. I'm going to put this match in. Bracket, I want it to match with this one here, comma, go to the array, which is here, like so, yep, comma, I want the exact value, close my bracket, hit enter, and I've done something not quite right in there, so I need to just make sure I've got it right. Oops, I know what I did. I only put one bracket at the end, I needed to put two. That one bracket at the end had to close my match function, and then the second bracket had to close my index function. So there we go, that should be right. Okay, so I can test this by doing lots of different ones. So at the moment I'm going Dolumbo to Singapore, and if I go here and check Dolumbo to Singapore, 1500, that's right. Let's do a different one. Let's do Alfrazi going to, what's W? Watertown. So let's try and do that. So let's change this to A, and let's change this to Watertown. Enter, and that gave me 1600. If I check that, Alfrazi to Watertown, 1600. So that's that whole part of the testing process to make sure that the things that you're putting in are actually working, right? I'm going to change this one to D. Let's go Dolumbo to Watertown. Let's have a look. Dolumbo to Watertown, 800, right? So it's all working perfectly. Now I've got to remember to go back and delete this cell here because these were just my workings. Don't need them in your file. Make sure that you do a save. And if we go to here, we have just finished question number 4. And it's really interesting because, we've just finished question number 5. It's really interesting because question 4 took us ages and it was a really complex little thing. It's worth 15 marks. Whereas this one, I don't think was very complex at all if you know the match and you know the index function. This one actually was really an easy way to get 13 marks. So anyway, we'll move down and we'll go on to question number 6. So now we're going to move on to the next question. We're going to go on to question number 6. And one of the things that I'm finding as I do this is because I'm getting used to jumping between files in the test, that it's the actual structure is pretty easy. It's just more about making sure you know the functions, making sure you know the right functions to use in the right areas, okay? So let's go ahead and do number 6. Enter the formula in cell F10. So if we go to here, F10 is the time, travel time in days, okay? So go back. Enter a formula in F10 to calculate the whole days for the journey between these ports using the speed of the ship and the number of miles. Okay, so I'm going to have to go to the other file, which is, where's my other file? It is it ship? Yep, it's ship. So it's going to open this ship file, bring this over here. This is the second file that was provided by Cambridge. Okay, and here you can see, let's have a look. Yep, we've got, ship's knots, there's our speed, there's our ship code, there's our codes down here, the names of the ships, the speed that they're travelling, and then there's some weights and things like that, which we'll probably get to later in the program. So, go back and read that question again. Journey between the ships and the number of files. Time taken in hours is calculated by dividing the distance in miles by the speed in knots. So it's distance divided by speed. So if we go to here, distance we've already worked out, divided by speed, but we need to know which ship it is to work out which ship is travelling at which speed, which ship travels at which speed. Okay, alright, so what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to, first of all, does it tell you which ship? When travelling between the ports, ship to okay, so it doesn't tell you a ship. So we're going to, first of all, choose a ship. Let's choose a ship. Let's choose the Gemma. There we go, the G. Right, so we're going to choose the Gemma as our ship that travels at 29 knots, okay? This is just a test ship. It should work for all of them, but I'm just going to choose Gemma. So if we go back to our main thing, our ship's code here is going to have to be a G. So we're going to put in a G up there so that we're saying, theoretically, Gemma is the ship that we're using, okay? So it's our practice ship. Now, to work out this, I said it was number of miles divided by the speed. So this is actually going to be not such a hard formula. We're going to go equals this cell here, which is our number of miles, divided by, and we want to work out the speed of Gemma, of this ship. So to do that, we really need to do a VLOOKUP, right? So, which we've used before plenty of times, so you guys should be fine on this now. So the lookup value, what is the lookup value going to be? Well, the lookup value is going to be G for Gemma. So we're going to click there, and then we're going to put a comma in, and we're going to say which table are we going to look this up in? Well, we're going to look this up in the speed of the ships. So we're just going to look up all of that section there. So I've got all of my ship codes, and I've got all of my speeds, which are in column 3, right? So that's going to be my VLOOKUP. I'm going to say I want to get that information from column 3, and I want it to be the exact information from that section there. Close my brackets and hit enter. And that tells me my travel time is 27.5862. Now, let's read this question again. Time taken in hours is calculated and divided by the distance of speed knots. When travelling between the ports, ship travels continuously for 24 hours each day. Okay, so it wants me to break it down into days. So in other words, that code needs to be divided by 24. So if I hit enter there, it's giving me 1.1493 days. Now, who is going to tell you what 14933 is? So let me read the question again. Enter of whole days, right? So this is giving me another little clue here. This is saying you have to round this up to whole days, no decimal points. It has to be whole days, okay? So I'm going to go back to here, click on this cell, and I want to round up my whole answer. So it's a simple division. It's this one divided by the speed of the ship, divided by 24, which gives us days, but then all of that needs to be rounded up. So in here, right at the very start, I'm going to put the word round, and then I'm going to put a bracket. So I'm saying I round up every single thing that I've just done in there, and I want you to round that up to, well, I'll put my round in here, comma, 0 decimal places. I want it to round to 0 decimal places. So in other words, get that whole answer there, divide it by 24, and round it up, or why don't we put round up to 0 decimal places. If I hit enter, perfect, right? So it's come in as 2 full days. It's rounded it up to 2 full days. Now we can change that and test that. Like I said, we always want to do our testing. We want to test by changing my ship code. So I might change my ship code to R for Rose. Okay, so I'm going to change that, put in an R, enter, and it still says 2. So maybe Rose travels at the same speed. Rose does not travel at the same speed. So, but it's rounded it up, so it might be similar. Let's try and choose something that's really different from Gemma. Gemma's at 29. Let's try Z. Let's see if that makes a difference. See, it just because Z's a much slower boat, it changed it to 3 days. Now, if I wanted to test that with Rose again, if I said Rose, right, and it goes back to 2, but I was really unsure because I tested it with Gemma and Rose, I could easily take the roundup off, right? I could just go through and say, all right, let's take off bang, 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 take those 3 things, take off the bracket and the roundup, right, and just do this like this, hit enter, then they'll give me a decimal answer, right? So for Rose, it's 1.8, but for Gemma, I think it was 1.4, wasn't it? Yeah, 1.14. So you can see that there is actually a difference between the two, but the rounding is causing it to be the same amount of days, right? So round up, brackets, I'm just putting that back on, the bit that I just took off, right? Comma 0, close the bracket, hit enter. There we go, it's rounded it up. So that's it, that's question 6 completed. That's another 9 marks. And like I said before I started this question, once you get used to jumping between files and highlighting the sections that you want to look up or you want to match to or you want an index to, once you get used to jumping between the files, there's no issue, right? You'll find that this stuff happens a lot quicker and you'll be able to get this done better. Right, let's move on to question number 7. Enter a formula in cell G10 to display the arrival date at the end of the journey. Okay, so this is only worth 1 mark, so it should really just be the departure date plus 2, so plus whatever's in there, right? So we could try this. Let's go equals the cell that's going to be here, B9, and then I'm assuming all we have to do is go plus whatever this cell is. There, hit enter, and we should have that, right? So it's given me 2 days onto there. Now remember, I had Zafira took 3 days, so let's use Zafira to test this. Put a Z in, click out, and it's added 3 days, right? So that's a simple mark. That was a really easy mark. So I'll just go back and show you the code for that again. All I did is said get the departure date and add however much days travel time it is, and that'll give you your arrival date on the end there. So that's an easy one. 1 easy mark. Let's move on to question 8. So we're getting into the section where I would have thought, oh yeah, it's going to be a lot more marks, it's going to be a lot more difficult. But it's not. You've actually got the bulk of your marks have been up here in question 4 and 5, even in question 6. You're getting down to a few 1-pointers and a few 1-mark answers. So let's go down. There's a 9 down here, but let's go through and work these next ones out to finish this question. Right, question number 8. Enter a formula in cell A10 to display the planned departure date, which is the arrival date in the port plus 2 days to unload the containers, to unload and load the containers, save your spreadsheet. In A10, It's the planned departure date, which is the arrival date plus 2. So that shouldn't be too hard at all, right? Let's have a quick look at this. Let's go to here. We're going to A10, that's this cell here. We are going to do the new planned departure date, which is the arrival date plus 2. So that's really easy. Let's just go equals the arrival date, which is G10, plus 2. So that's all you should need to do there. That's it. Hit enter. So that should be the arrival date plus 2 days to load and unload. That's it. We've done it. Is that a one marker? That's an easy one marker, right? Enter a formula in A10 to display the planned departure rate, which is the arrival date in the port plus 2 days to unload. That's it. We've done it. It's basic. Question 8. One easy mark. Question 9. Edit the formulae entered in steps 2 to 8 so that the blank cells, rather than error messages, are displayed if the data is not present in related cells. So you haven't entered any data, an error comes in, you don't want to have the error message, you just want to have a blank cell. Okay, and it says save your spreadsheet as TS1A. So you've got to do a resave here with a new letter as well. Okay, so that means you're showing that you've done half your work, and then if you make a mistake on this, okay, that's good. Right, so let's get back to that and have a look at that. Let's go to here. So let's use this one as an example. This is not a bad example right here, right? Any one of these. But let's say this one, right? Yeah. Okay, so at the moment, this cell has an error message, right? It comes up with an error message saying not applicable because it hasn't got any information put in there in regards to the port code, okay? So because it hasn't got the port code in there, it's coming up this hash error, right? So I want to put something in there to get rid of that error message. So what I could do is, well, I want to get rid of the error. So let's put in here, in this bit of formula in here, let's put in if error, which is a function, right? So if error, right? And let's put a bracket around it. Did it for me automatically, so don't forget to put that bracket in. If an error on the VLOOKUP, then what I want it to do, it's similar to our VLOOKUP. I want it to have put nothing in the cell. So nothing in the cell is 2 inverted commas, close the bracket, right? So if an error occurs, don't put the error message in here, just put the double inverted commas, right? So if I go there, hit enter. So that's it. So now there's nothing there, right? So I've still got my function there, but if an error appears, which would have been the NA error, it's going to get rid of that. So let's actually copy that all the way down and see if that gets rid of all of those errors. And let's just make sure the function's still there. Yeah, it is, that works. Now, here's the problem. It says, go back and do it for everything from step 2 onward. So if we go back here, step 2 started at D5. Okay, so pretty much every function we've done, we've got to put an if error statement in. Okay, so that's time consuming, but it's not such a difficult job, it's just time consuming, right? So let's get this code here. No, let's go to here and do it here. I should have just done it from here in the start. If error, brackets, comma, double inverted commas, close bracket, right, hit enter. So this is where it would have been the beauty of reading your whole exam question through first and then realizing I could have done this on the fly. But then the functions at the start were more complex, so maybe it's better to just do it this way. I'm just going to drag that down there now, so I should have that if error on all of these. Okay. Right, so we're going to go back and put a few if errors elsewhere. The starting date, we don't need to put an if error because that's just going to be something that the user types in. So there's no formula there. There's no formula here, so I don't need to put anything there. There's nothing on journey details, that's a heading. So we get to here. Here's the next one that we need to look at, which is it's just drawing the information directly from there across, right? Which in theory you'd say, why wouldn't the user just type it in there? But that's okay, they've put a formula in here. So we could go here and we could say, we need an if error statement in here to say that if D5 is blank, then we put nothing. But if D5 is not blank, then we put something in. So we need an if statement, right? So let's go if in bracket D5 equals exactly nothing, then let's put exactly nothing. That kind of makes sense. Otherwise, if there's an error, and that error would be on D5, if there's an error on D5, then we want to put nothing as well. 2 brackets. Okay, does that make sense? Let's have a look. So, if D5 equals nothing, so in other words, nothing has been typed into here, then we want nothing coming out in here. However, if there's an error in D5, then we also want you to put nothing down there because I don't want to show any errors. Okay, so that should be right. Let's hit enter. Okay, so that's it. So that's correct. So I'll just show you that formula one more time. If D5 has nothing in it, then we're going to put nothing as the answer, which would be the true response. The false response would be if there's something in there, if there's an error, we're going to put nothing, but otherwise we're just going to put D5, right? So in this if error section here, if D5 is okay, we put D5. If it's not okay, if an error comes up, then we're going to put nothing. That's the way that one works. So that one's a little bit more complicated in there. Right, let's keep going down. Let's go to this one. Now this one says equals G10 plus 2. Now we don't really need, it's just the arrival date plus 2. That's the most simple one. But if there's nothing in there, so we want to put in an if error bracket. If G10 plus 2 doesn't work, then essentially we want to put nothing in. Close the brackets. Hit enter. So that one should work as well. So what we're saying essentially is, if the formula doesn't work, put nothing. That's all we're doing. That's all these if errors are. Is if the formula doesn't work, put nothing. It's really that simple. Now this is where we're going to get a little bit more complicated with our dates here, but really the concept is the same. We go right to the very start. We say if error. So if there's an error on this huge big formula that we've put here, then put nothing. Close the brackets, bang. Now there's not an error. That one's actually working fine, so it's not going to work. But that's just added that if error. If this big formula we did before has an error, put nothing in, but it doesn't. So that one should be okay. Port code is entered by the user, so there's no formula there. This one we've already done. We worked that out. Miles. Now the same thing here. If there's an error in this, if error in our miles, then we've just got to put in a nothing instead of an error statement in there. So that formula is done. This one, same thing, if error. So this is not so complicated. It's more about the time consuming of putting that little extra statement, that extra check in there. And this one's going to be the same, right? So if error bracket, then we're going to, if error in that formula, then we're going to do that. Okay, bang. So we should be right. So I think that's it for question number 9. All right, edit the formula entered into steps 2 to 8 so the blank cells rather than error messages are displayed if the data is not present in the related cell. We've done that in every single one of those, so that should be fine. So it now says save your spreadsheet as TS1A followed by the center number. So to do that, I'm going to go to here and I can see it's TS1. I've got to go File, Save As. You make sure you don't do just a save. In fact, we probably should just do a save first. No, it says Save As. Let's do File, Save As. And we go to the Save As and we put an A in there. So now I've got my same file except it's got an A and I'm hitting Save. And now I'm assuming I'm working on the A file from now on. Let's have a look, see what it says. Yeah, it just takes me on to the last. Wow, there's still a lot of. Oh, this is all one question, right? So we've still got a fair few questions here to go through. So let's go through these. I'm just going to pause the video right here and we'll come back and attack 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Okay, let's go on to the next question. This is question number 10. If a ship is traveling to multiple ports, the user will enter further port codes into cells C11 to C24 as required. Apply the appropriate replication as far as row 24 to the formula and functions entered in steps 3 to 4. So the formula and functions in, okay, so we're going C11 to C24. So if I go back to here, I'm saying C11, that's there, to C24. Okay, so what we're saying is if we put more port codes in here, then the function that runs here, C9, JPort, B3 to A3 to B12, should be the same all the way down here. There's a little bit of a problem here, right? Because if I drag this function down, let's say I click that and I copy it all the way down to the bottom there, the problem is with the way this VLOOKUP is set up, it's going to change. So it's A3, B12. See, that's moved down, A4, B13, whereas it should be A3 to B12. So that should be consistent all the way down. So I'm just going to copy that little A3 to B12. Just going to copy that little section there, A3 to B12. Because the rows are moving down, normally it'll move down and auto increment all this way down. But you don't want those two to auto increment. You want them to stay from A3 to B12. You don't want them moving down as well, right? So if I go to here, no wait, Command Z on that. Just leave that there. Let's go to this one. You can see it's gone A5 to B14. That's not what I want. So I want it to be A3 to B12, enter. So I'm just going to go through and check these are all A3 to B12. Now, there's a faster way to do this, which would obviously be copy the whole thing and paste it as it goes down. Problem is, I do want this one auto-incrementing, which is the C13. I want it looking at there, but I want it looking at this array. Okay, so I'm just going to be super careful doing this, making sure that these ones don't move. Command V, return, go to the next one. Oops, that one. Let's have a look. We want A3, B12, A6. Why is that one so bad there? Right, I want that, A3 to B12. Now I'll go to the next one, enter. A3, B12, A3, B12, A3, B12. This one's wrong. A3 to B12. Enter. This one, A3 to B12. This one should be A3 to B12. Enter. Go down. Command V, A3 to B12, so that should be okay. Enter. This one needs to be A3 to B12. So the other thing we could do is just copy and paste like just the formula from there across, and then I could have just pasted that each time. But like I said, it's only 24, and I just want to make sure it's exactly right, so I'm just going to do it this way. Enter, A3 to B12. Let's go to here, A3 to B12. Enter. And look, there's probably another way to do this, but for the purpose of doing this quickly, and you're in the exam and you haven't got anything to research, that's probably the best way. So I'm just going to go back and check that they're all, that one's not right. Double check everything. For your exam, make sure you double check everything, right? So A3, 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 A3. That one's wrong. A3 to B12. Okay, and this will give you a clue to a few of the others, right? Because there are a few others that are obviously going to auto-increment, but we need to make sure that it doesn't do that, right? And I'm sure there's a way to make it so it doesn't auto-increment as you copy down. It's just right now for me. Okay, so now that should be all right. Right now for me, I don't know that. So, okay, let's go to here and let's put in a few test cases and just make sure they work. A, C, D, F, N. Let's go and put those in. A, C, D, F, N. All right, so they all look like they're working. That's good. Now let's work out the distance from one to another. So let's go from here. Let's scroll that down. Okay, so that looks like it's working. I've got a question about that, which we could go and have a look at in just a minute. My question is, I'm wondering whether this 1600 is from Z to A, or whether it is from W to A. So I think that could be a bit of an issue, but I'll go and have a look at that in just a minute. Just going to copy that all the way down. There we go. Let's have a quick look and see what that is actually in the formula. Let's go back to here. No, let's go to here. if I went from W to A, it should be 1600. Let's have a quick look here. W to A, that's 1600. If I go A to C, it should be 1600 as well. Let's check that. A to C, 1600. Right, so it's actually worked right. So that formula is correct. Here, I'm going to copy this formula all the way down, and same thing. I just want to make sure that this doesn't change, this section in here. Right, so I'm going to drag that down. Right, so I've copied all that all the way down. Now, one of the things I wanted to check is I want to make sure that this A2, E27, that doesn't change, right? So if I just go down and look at that, oops, if I just go down and look at that, that hasn't changed. But what I am noticing is as I go down, these two numbers are changing, E13 and B8. Now, E13, that's this row here, which is the distance, that's fine. But B8 is actually the ship code. Now, I don't want the ship code to change. I always want it to be that same ship code, which is right in there, which is B5. So in actual fact, in here, that needs to be B5 every single time. Otherwise, I'm changing ships every time I go down, right? Which is not what I want to do. So I just need to make sure that all of those say B5. And it's the same thing. There's probably a different way or a faster way you can do it. For me, I'm just going to go through and make sure that every single one of those says B5. So I haven't changed the ship. Now this is one of the only shortcomings of just dragging down and copying down is that you do actually end up auto-incrementing. Now there's probably a way to do it where it doesn't auto-increment, which is what I said a minute ago, but I'd rather just make sure it's 100% perfect myself, and that way in the exam there's no excuses for saying, oh, it auto-incremented and it didn't work. No, you need to actually be aware that because of that, you need to check it and make sure it works, right? So I'm just going to keep going down, make sure I do every one of those needs to say B5 so that we're not changing ships every time it goes down. So I go here, 5, turn, and what does that take? 30 seconds to go through and check all of those? Not long. So in terms of your exam, that should be okay. Right, so now, as you can see, it is doing it, right? So we've got it here. We're saying we went from Colombo to Watertown. It took 800. It took 3 days, which gave us an arrival date of the 10th, which then should add 2 days here to make that the 12th. And then from the 12th, it's going to take 5 days, right? So to get to Alfrezi, and then we add 2 days, which is the 17th. Takes us to the 17th. From the 12th to the 17th is 5 days. That's correct. Add 2 days for our next departure date, which is the 19th. It's not on a Saturday or a Sunday, so it all seems to be working perfectly. You can see here, Colombo must be a Saturday or a Sunday. So actually, this looks like our code is working really well all the way down. If I click in any of these boxes, I can just check that my formula has been filled in. The only boxes that's not is my port code, and like I said before, my ship code and my start date. They're where the user enters information. So actually, I think I've finished question number 10 there. So that was worth 2 marks. And so it shouldn't really be, you can sort of see how difficult it can be based on the amount of marks, right? So 2 marks, it shouldn't have been a huge problem. Right, so let's move to the next question. Enter a formula in cell A3 to display the ship's itinerary 4, followed by a space, then the name of the ship using the ship code in cell B5, and the source files provided. There is no ship selected. Replace the name with no ship selected. So again, this looks like a simple VLOOKUP where if it's true, it's going to give you the ship's name. If it's false, it's going to give you no ship selected. So let's go through and do a simple VLOOKUP on this right here. Let's just go back to here. And sorry, which cell? I'm sure it's that big yellow cell. It wants us to be in cell A3. So that's going to be here. So at the moment, cell A3 has no ship selected, which is actually the words they want us to use. So I'm going to keep that. In fact, I'm going to put it in inverted commas because I know that's going to be my end of my lookup if I do a VLOOKUP there. Right, so to do this, I am going to have to put in a VLOOKUP in here first, right? So I'm just going to put equals VLOOKUP. Okay, what am I looking up? I'm looking up whatever this ship code is. So it's B5, right? So I'm going to put a B5, comma. So if I'm looking up that, where am I looking up that code? I'm looking it up on the J22 ships, so I'm going to be looking it up in that section there, right? So that should put that in there, and then I'm going to say I want column number 2, which is the names, and I want the exact name. And now, how do I use this if no ship selected? Let's see, I'm going to close that bracket and put a comma in there. So I've done a VLOOKUP in here, VLOOKUP in there to find the name of the ship. That's if it can find the name of the ship. But if it can't find the name of the ship, I want this to be here. So I need to use in here an if error brackets. So now it's going to say if there's an error, in other words, if this lookup doesn't work, then you're going to print out no ship selected. Otherwise, it'll print the name of the ship from the VLOOKUP. So that should be correct right now. I think we've got the right amount of brackets. Let's hit enter. And it's given me Zafira. Now, if I go back to the question, just have a quick look here. It says, enter the formula, ship's itinerary 4. All right, so I've got to add that ship's itinerary 4 into here. Okay, so let's go back to here. And let's do, before the if error, let's do, let's put it in here. Let's put it in about there. Inverted commas and an and sign. And let's go ships itinerary 4. So now I'm putting in the words in inverted commas, ships itinerary 4, close the inverted commas, and I'm putting in my VLOOKUP, which should be the name of the ship. And then I'm going to put it all in there. I'm going to hit enter. Okay, now this says ship's itinerary 4. There's no space there in Zafira. So this is where you check everything, right? So I'm just going to go to the end of the 4. I'm just going to put a little space in there first, and then that should work perfectly. Now, I've done question number 11. If nothing's in there, no ship selected. So let's test that. So instead of having a Z in there, I'm just going to delete that. So there's nothing in there, and it says no ship selected. All of this information changes. The distance from ports don't change because the distance from ports are a constant. They're still the same, right? But everything else changes. Let's put in a different ship name. Let's put in E. See what happens. Make sure I get the right name. Perfect, right? So there's the Elvira came in and that worked. And all the times and dates have all worked. Let's go back to the Z because that's the one we've been using as our practice one. And that all seems to work, right? Make sure I spelt everything correctly. Itinerary. Spelt it wrong. I knew I spelt it wrong. A-R-Y. There we go. So I've got that correct. Bang. Ship's itinerary 4 Zafira. Perfect. So that means I think I've finished question 11. Now, display all dates in day, month, year format. Save your TSA1 file. So if I look at this, I can see this is already in day, month. We already addressed that right at the very start. So I'm just going to hit save on that once. And this says save as TSA1. So that's already done. So in actual fact, question 12 we've just done as well, just by saving it and by making sure right at the very start we set it up in the right format that already does that. Okay, so let's go down to our last 2 questions, question 13 and question 14. All right, so the final question, or the final 2 questions are to test your spreadsheet. Now, we've been testing as we go along to make sure that everything works, but this actually provides you with a great opportunity to make sure that everything works, because if you get to stage 13, stage 14 and your table fails, then you can go back and work out where the errors have been. But that's what I've said to you all the way along. Make sure you do your testing as you go along to make sure that it works. So let's do this first one. It says, test the spreadsheet model using the following data. So I'm going to go to my spreadsheet model, and in fact, I'm going to move mine over so I can see both the exam and my spreadsheet right here. I'm going to go through and see if we can work this out. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out all the information that the user would normally put in, because I want a blank spreadsheet to start with. I want to blank everything so that we can actually start it from scratch, right? So there we go. Here's my shipping. Everything's black. I've got no errors. I've got no anything in there that's wrong. I haven't deleted any of my formula. I only deleted the thing that the users would normally put in. So it says, let's start with ship's code H. So I've got H in there. That's my first thing. Now, it already says Harriet. Now, I can go and check that straight away to make sure that's right if I want, just a visual confirmation, which it is, so I know that's working. Travelling from Dolumbo to Nagambie, so my first port code is going to be D, right, and then I can click here, and then I think obviously N would be the next one, Nagambie, and then my next one is back to Tawara, so I'm going to hit T there. So I've entered my 3 different port codes according to what they've said. Start date is the 2nd of July. So I'm going to go to my date and go 02. July is /07 / what year? 2022. So they're my dates in the correct format. I hit enter, and then all of a sudden all my information goes in straight away. Now, if that all seems to work and it looks like it's all gone great, like ours has, because we've been checking it all the way along, then that's worth 7 marks just doing that, right? Just by entering, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bits of information and it working, we've just given ourselves 7 marks for the exam. So that looks fantastic. Now it says, save the new file as ts2_. So I go File and I say Save As, and I change this from ts1a to ts2. All right, so it's exactly what it says. Would still have my student number and my centre number and all that sort of stuff's the same. I've just added the 2 at the end. So I hit save. Bang, it's done. Right, so there I've just got 7 easy marks by entering some information. Now we go to question 14. Test the spreadsheet with the following data. So it wants you to do it again. So this is just like a free give me extra marks. Here's 4 extra marks here. So I'm going to go and remove the information that is, no, that was wrong. Remove the information that is input by the user, which are the port codes, the start date, and the ship. They're the only 3 things that I need to remove. I've removed that information. Let's start with ship code, U. And it says the Ulysses. Let's go with our starting date, planned departure dates, the 30th of the 7th. So 30th/07/2022. And my port codes are going to be as follows. They're going to be travelling from Singapore. Oh, Fingawara. Why is Fingawara and Singapore different? I've got to go and just check that carefully. This is where you check everything, right? So, Singapore is there. Fingawara is Z, right? So that's a trick. That is definitely a trick. So you want to make sure you get that right. So you go back here. That should be a Z, right? So we're going from Fingawara to Tawara, which should be a T, and then from Tawara to Snindon, got that, and then back to Fingawara, which was our Z. Okay, so check it again. Fingawara, Tawara, Snindon, Fingawara, date of departure, ship code, bang, 4 easy marks done. File, save as, not a save as, saving it as TS3. Okay, so I put in my TS3, hit save, bingo, bango, we are done. And we've finished the whole exam, 100% marks, A star, well, A anyway for AS level. That's an A, and it should be perfect. Now, if you've worked your way through this video slowly and you've had any issues, pause the video and rewind so you can go back and see why I did certain things. I've tried to talk more than maybe you, well, obviously more than you would during the exam, just to show you my thinking of how I've done certain things. If you have questions, email me. You guys have got my email address, the students. So email me. If you're some random watching this on YouTube, then you can just message me and I'll try and message you back if you've got any questions about this project. Good luck in your exams. Thanks.